In the past, in our village, it was customary that children who died would not have proper graves, while older adults were buried according to the local customs or cremated. Even smaller children were sometimes thrown onto the mountain. We had a special mountain called Hell's Mountain, where the deceased children were thrown. It was truly terrifying as we had to pass by it every day to reach school. When I went to school with my friends, I didn't feel scared except for a few occasions when we encountered wild dogs. They would dig and eat the bodies of the deceased children, which looked horrifying. This was truly a frightening and haunting experience from my childhood. The story I want to tell happened one day when I had an evening shift at school. I was so engrossed in my work that by the time I left it was already getting dark and raining heavily. There was no one to accompany me, so I had to run home as fast as I could alone. However, as I was crossing Hell's Mountain, I stumbled and fell to the ground. When I got up, I realized there was nothing under my feet that could have caused me to trip. As I was wondering about what just happened, I suddenly noticed someone standing behind me. It was a young man, and he took the initiative to start a conversation, asking if I was okay. Then he walked home with me. On the way, he asked me whose child I was. When I answered, he replied that he knew my older sister, and he accompanied me to the entrance of the village. Because the young man mentioned knowing my sister, I sent her a message. But after sending the message, I suddenly realized that this guy wasn't walking ahead of me, but rather he was walking behind me. So I turned around to look. At that moment, I was so scared that I almost wet my pants. The young man had a large gash on his face and had a terrifying smile that stretched to his ears. I was in a state of panic and quickly called my mother, then ran home as fast as I could. When I arrived home, I saw everyone anxiously awaiting for me at the front door. My parents and grandparents were worried and didn't know what had happened to me. They guided me to bed, and all I could do was cry and couldn't say anything. After a while, when I calmed down, I narrated the story about the young man I encountered under the mountain to my family. However, my family didn't know who I was talking about. It took about 2 or 3 hours until I regained my strength and got up from bed to join them for dinner. My sister had also returned from school at that time. When I saw her, I suddenly remembered that the young man mentioned knowing my sister. I sat down and recounted the afternoon incident with her. After thinking for a while, my sister remembered a classmate who had passed away. Her friend Jen was also a resident of our village, but I was too young at that time, so I had no knowledge of her friend's death. What left a deeper impression about her friend's death was when people said that a few years ago, a child named Jen, my sister's friend, and the same young man I met in the afternoon, climbed a tall tree to show off to their friends. The tree was about 10 meters high from the ground. But unexpectedly, the branch broke and Jen fell straight to the ground. The fall killed him instantly, and during the fall, his face was scratched and torn by the branches, reaching his ears. Because Jen died at a young age, he was not given a proper burial, but instead was discarded on Hell Mountain, which we used to cross on our way back home after school. Upon hearing me recount the message from the young man sent to my sister, she remembered a time when mischievous Jen snatched her hairpin and hid it. Following Jen's instructions, my father grabbed a flashlight and led my sister and me to Tiger's Mouth Rock, a large rock shaped like a tiger with its mouth open on the mountain. This rock possessed a deep crevice, requiring my dad to insert his hand and inside to search for something. After fumbling around for a while, we eventually discovered the hairpin that Jen had concealed from my older sister. Even after his passing, he still desired to make amends for what he had done wrong. This story remained in my thoughts for many years, and I couldn't determine whether Jen intended to ensure my safe return home that day, or if he simply wanted to return my older sister's hairpin. Nevertheless, Jen was the finest ghost I had ever encountered.